perhaps you can let the day be finished. At least for now. Nothing needs to be solved in this moment, and nothing needs to be held up by even the smallest amount of effort. If you'd like, you can feel the bed supporting you in the simplest way quietly, patiently, without asking for anything back from you tonight. Tonight's gentle topic is tears, not as a storm, and not as a scene from a film, but as a soft kind of weather inside a single human body. A small signal that something has begun to loosen. The way a clenched hand slowly remembers how to open in warm water. While you listen, you don't need to remember any of this. You don't need to follow closely. You don't need to stay awake. You can simply drift and let the words pass by like soft lights in the distance, lanterns along a path you are no longer walking. Whenever you're ready, the body can begin to settle, one slow breath at a time. We'll move through 100 small facts about tears, where they come from, how they're made, what they do for the eye, and what they sometimes carry for the heart. We'll move slowly, because slow is the right pace for the night. And whether you reach the end of these 100 small lights or sleep arrives long before that, both are perfectly all right. There is no audience here. There is only the room, the breath, and the soft permission to rest. Tears come in 3 everyday voices: basal, a reflex, and emotional. Even though we often use the one word tears, the body makes watery comfort for different reasons, and each reason has its own quiet purpose. Basal tears are the steady ones that live on the eye all day long, keeping the surface smooth, clear, and protected, even when nothing in particular is happening. Reflex tears are more like a quick rinse showing up when smoke, wind, or an onion asks the eye to flush away an irritation. Emotional tears arrive through a different doorway, shaped by feeling, meaning, and the social parts of being human. In gentle research language, they're not simply more tears, but a different kind of signal layered on top of the ordinary physiology of the eye. Each one moves through the same eyes, and yet each one carries a slightly different message, like 3 different songs played on the same soft instrument. And maybe that's quietly comforting, knowing the body has more than one way to make water, and more than one reason to do so. Tonight, if you'd like, let the jaw soften just a millimeter, as if the mouth has finally agreed to put down whatever it was carrying earlier today. Basal tears quietly keep the cornea clear and comfortable. The front of the eye, the cornea, doesn't have its own blood vessels, and it relies on a thin tear film to stay healthy and to remain clear enough for the world to come through. Basal tears are part of that steady maintenance, bringing moisture, smoothing tiny irregularities, and helping the eye feel calm enough to simply see. They don't announce themselves. They rarely demand attention. They're more like a background hush, a layer of care that keeps friction low and comfort high, moment after moment. Whether or not anyone notices, they are perhaps the most patient kind of help the body offers itself, repeating the same small gesture for a lifetime, asking for nothing in return. And like many quiet helpers, they only become visible when they are missing. It can be soothing to imagine that kind of quiet caretaking happening in you right now, small, faithful, invisible, like dew that appears without effort just before the morning light arrives. Reflex tears rinse the eye like a tiny self-cleaning rain. When something irritates the eye, sensory nerves react quickly, faster than thought. The result can be reflex, tearing extra fluid, meant to wash the surface and carry away what doesn't belong there. It's not dramatic, it's protective. The body doesn't debate the situation or delay its response. It simply makes a little more water and lets gravity and blinking do the rest of the gentle work. In a way, reflex tears show how the nervous system prefers simple solutions. First rinse, soothe, reset, and once the irritation passes, the flow can settle back down to its quiet baseline. There's something almost humble about that response. No fanfare, no announcement. Just the body taking care of itself before the mind even notices. Like a brief shower that leaves the air clearer afterward. And then, quietly, the night returns to its own slow rhythm. Emotional tears are especially human, shaped by feeling and meaning. Humans are unusual in how often tears appear in emotional contexts, and researchers have explored how crying can function as more than a bodily leak. Emotional tears can be woven into connection, an outward sign that something inside is tender, and full, or overwhelmed in a quiet way. The science is still developing, and careful language matters here. Tears don't guarantee relief, and they don't mean the same thing for everyone, or in every moment of a single life. But they often show up at moments when words feel too sharp, too heavy, or simply too far away from what's actually happening inside. They can mark beauty, a grief, gratitude, reunion, exhaustion, any of the deeper currents that words sometimes can't reach. They are a language older than language, and perhaps that's enough tonight to let tears be one of the body's softer languages, speaking without needing to be translated, understood, or even noticed. The tear film is a thin protective layer that smooths vision. The tear film isn't just wetness on the eye. It's a structured, layered surface that helps the eye stay stable and clear. When it's even and intact, light passes smoothly through, and the eye feels less scratchy, less alert, less in need of attention. When it's disrupted by dry air, wind, or long stretches of staring vision, can feel slightly blurred, and the nervous system may register a soft discomfort in the background. So in a simpler sense, tears help the world look softer at the edges, not because reality changes, but because the eye's surface becomes calm again. Comfort has its own optics, and tears are part of how the body keeps those optics gentle. The eye, like the rest of the body, prefers to look out from a place of ease. It's a gentle thought. Sometimes clarity comes from softness, not from strain. Sometimes the world becomes clearer simply because we have stopped trying so hard to see it. Blinking spreads tears like a soft brushstroke. Each blink is a small movement with a steady purpose. The lids sweep across the eye, spreading tears and renewing that thin, protective film. It happens so often, you rarely notice it unless you focus on it. The way you might notice your breathing only when the room becomes very quiet. Blinking can also change with attention and emotion. When we're tense or intensely focused, we may blink less, and the tear film thins. When we soften and look away from effort, the rhythm can return on its own. Like an old song, the body has always known how to sing. There are perhaps 15 to 20,000 of these tiny brushstrokes in a single day, and each one is a small act of care, performed without supervision and without thanks. If you'd like, you might notice the shoulders lowering, as if a heavy coat is sliding off without hurry, settling onto the floor of the room and being forgotten there. Tears include layers that balance moisture and evaporation. In a simple picture, the tear film has components that help it behave like a stable surface rather than a quickly drying puddle. A watery layer provides moisture and comfort to the eye's surface. An outer oily component slows evaporation, like a thin lid keeping warmth in a cup. Another component helps the film cling gently to the eye, rather than beading up and sliding away with every movement. It's a quiet balancing act, holding on, letting go, protecting and releasing, repeated all day long. Every blink, an invitation for renewal. And it happens without the mind needing to supervise any of it. The eye, in its own way, knows what to do. And it has known for a very long time, like a shoreline that keeps its shape, even as the tide comes and goes, hour after hour, year after year, without making a sound about it. The cornea is highly sensitive, built to notice tiny disruptions. The cornea contains many sensory nerve endings, tuned to detect small changes, dryness, a grain of dust, a touch of wind, the faintest disturbance of the protective film. This sensitivity isn't meant to alarm you. It's meant to protect a delicate surface that the rest of vision depends on. When the tear film is stable, those nerves can stay quiet and unbothered. When the film breaks up, they may speak up, asking gently for moisture and a few extra blinks. So in a quiet way, tears and nerves cooperate. One notices, the other soothes. It's a small partnership that works in the background of every waking minute, never asking for credit, never expecting recognition. And maybe the body is like that everywhere, listening closely, then answering with care. A whole inner world of small attentions, quietly looking after themselves. Mucin helps tears cling gently to the eye's surface. Beneath the watery part of the tear film is a thin component called mucin, which acts a little like a soft adhesive. Without it, tears might bead up and slide off, leaving dry patches behind that the eye would soon feel as small irritations. With it, the film spreads evenly, smoothing the eye's surface like a fresh layer of finish on quiet wood. Mucin is rarely talked about, yet it's part of what allows the eye to feel comfortable for hours at a time, especially during the long stretches of focus that modern life often asks for. It's a small ingredient with a steady job, working quietly so that nothing has to feel rough. It is, in its own way, one of the unsung kindnesses of being a body. There's something gentle about the unseen pieces that hold our comfort together. They don't ask to be noticed. They are content to be enough. Simply by being there, the lacrimal system is a coordinated network, not a single gland. When researchers describe how tears are produced, they often use the phrase lacrimal functional unit, a way of saying that many small parts cooperate to do what looks, from the outside, like a single simple thing. The main tear gland sits near the upper, outer corner of the eye, but accessory glands, the eyelids, the cornea's nerves, and the tear ducts all play roles in keeping the system in tune. Signals move between them. Balancing production, distribution, and drainage, moment by moment, so tears aren't a single faucet turning on. They're more like a small ecosystem that has learned to keep itself in tune even when the day is full of distraction. And like all ecosystems, the network is wiser than any one of its parts could be alone. A network like that can be a quiet reassurance. Your body is rarely working alone. Many soft hands are at the wheel, even when your own hands are resting at your sides. Tiny tear drains guide tears inward, then quietly away. At the inner corner of each eye are small openings called puncta, which lead into thin channels and eventually into the nasal passages. This is how excess tears find their way out, without making a mess of the cheeks or the room. Most of the time, this drainage happens silently, and you'd never know it's there. It's only when there are more tears than the channels can carry on a windy day, in a tender moment, or during a long laugh, that the eye can briefly overflow. Even then, the system works to bring everything back to balance, gently and without any instructions from us. There's a quiet competence to that whole arrangement. The body has plumbing it, never had to design, and never has to think about. If you'd like, allow the forehead to smooth, as if smoothing a folded sheet by candlelight, the small wrinkles softening one by one without effort. Dry air can speed evaporation, even when you feel fine. Indoor heat, air conditioning, and fans, and long stretches of focused work can quietly thin the tear film throughout the day. The eye may not feel obviously dry. Instead, vision can become slightly less crisp, or a soft tiredness can settle behind the eyes by evening. Sleep researchers sometimes describe how environmental conditions interact with comfort in subtle ways that we don't always consciously register. None of this is alarming, and none of this needs to be solved tonight. It's simply useful to know that the eyes appreciate a little humidity, a little blinking, and a little softness in the day's pace, whenever it can be offered. The body is patient with us, even when we forget to be patient with it. Tonight, the room can be a kind of slow rain for the eyes, just by being still, just by being dim, just by letting the lids close as long as they'd like to. Screens can reduce blink rate, thinning the tear film. When attention narrows toward a glowing rectangle, blinking can slow without us noticing. Sometimes by half, the tear film, which usually refreshes with every blink, may not get its usual maintenance during these long stretches of focus. By the end of a long screen day, the eyes can feel a quiet kind of fatigue, not painful, just a little less at ease, a little less willing to stay open. The body has its own way of asking for rest, often by softening focus, blurring the screen slightly, and inviting longer blinks. And sleep, of course, is the deepest version of that invitation, the one the eyes have been waiting for all day. Tonight, the wait is finally over. Perhaps the eyes can take this hour off from looking and simply rest behind closed lids, the way a tired animal rests under a wide tree at the warm edge of the afternoon. The eye's surface is living tissue with nightly repair rhythms. The cornea and surrounding tissues are alive in their own quiet way. Cells turn over, small repairs happen, and the surface refreshes itself across the day, and especially at night, when the lids are closed for hours at a time. Sleep is sometimes described as a maintenance window for many tissues throughout the body, and the eye is no exception to that pattern. While you rest, the eyes rest too. And the small wear and tear of the day can be gently smoothed by the body's own slow craftsmanship. None of this needs your attention. It's already happening, has always happened, and will keep happening for as long as there is a body here to take care of. It is one of the many quiet inheritances of being alive. There's a quiet kindness in knowing that, even now, the body is taking care of itself behind the scenes. You don't have to oversee it. You only have to let it work. Tears can change composition depending on context. Researchers have noted that tears produced in different situations may not be identical to one another. Reflex tears that rinse a windy eye can have a slightly different makeup than basal tears that maintain comfort all day. And emotional tears may differ subtly again. Studies on emotional tears in particular are still developing, and conclusions remain careful and provisional, the way good science often is when the territory is delicate. What's gentle to remember is that the body can produce different versions of the same simple thing, depending on what it senses is needed in the moment. It's a kind of fine-tuning, hidden inside something that looks identical from the outside. The eye, like the rest of you, has more than one mood. Many small differences make up a single quiet stream. That, too, is a kind of intelligence, soft, attentive, and almost invisible from the outside. Saltiness is part of tears' natural balance. Tears carry a small amount of salt, which is part of how they keep the eye's surface healthy and how they signal that this fluid, indeed, body fluid, the exact balance is delicate. Too much would feel sharp and uncomfortable. Too little wouldn't protect the surface as well. The body keeps this balance most of the time without anyone thinking about it, and without you having to do a single thing. In gentle metaphor, the salt of tears can be seen as part of a tiny inner sea, kept in tune by quiet biology. And like the larger seas, this small one knows how to be still as well as how to move. There is something ancient in that small saltiness, an echo of where we came from a very long time ago. Maybe let the fingers rest. Not holding anything tonight. The hands can be like soft shells on a shore that no longer needs to be searched, no longer needs to be useful for a while. Warmth and moisture can signal safe enough to the body, comfort cues, like a warm room, a soft blanket, a gentle voice, or even a small touch of moisture in the air can help the nervous system shift toward rest. The eyes, the skin, and the breath read the environment together, like three quiet listeners forming a single conclusion. When the signals add up to safe enough, the body can let go a little more, and a little more after that. None of this requires perfection in the room or in the day. Even partial cues can be felt, and added together warmth here, quiet there, a soft pillow under the cheek, the small good news of being indoors and not having to do anything for a while. The body keeps a running total, and the total tonight can be enough. Tonight, the small kindnesses can be enough. They don't need to be grand. They only need to be present and noticed, even if only by a sleepy mind. The body often protects first, explains later. The eye reacts to dust before you decide what's happening. The skin pulls away from sharp edges before the mind catches up to what occurred. The system that makes tears is part of this same protective instinct, working faster than thought, often faster than language can describe. Most of life happens this way, Protection arrives quietly, and explanations follow if needed. Sometimes hours or days later, sometimes not at all. Trusting that timing can be a kind of relief. You don't have to understand every signal in order to let it pass through. You don't have to verify your body before believing it. The system is older than your interpretations of it, and it tends to know what it's doing. In its own way, perhaps the body has already done enough today. Tonight, it can simply be here, on this bed, in this room, with no further instructions required. A tear can be seen as eye weather mist, drizzle, gentle rain. Researchers describe tears with technical names, but a simpler picture can help the mind soften. Mist is the constant moisture that keeps things alive, present even when it goes unnoticed. Drizzle is the protective rinse that arrives now and then, washing away whatever shouldn't be there. Gentle rain is the slow, emotional kind that sometimes rolls in when feelings rise like a low. Soft front of weather. Each one passes through, and each one leaves the surface cleaner, softer, more at ease than it was before. There's nothing you need to forecast. There's nothing you need to prepare for. The eye keeps its own weather, and the weather always knows where it's going next. Even when you don't, and like all weather, it eventually gives way to a quieter sky. A sky like the one that lives behind closed eyelids on a peaceful night. Even a single blink is a small reset. One blink takes about as long as a sigh. Yet inside that brief closing, the eye's surface gets renewed. The tear film gets redistributed, and the brain takes a tiny micropause from the constant stream of input. We rarely think of blinks as restful, but the body uses them that way, small windows of dimming, all day long, hidden in plain sight, multiplied over hours. They add up to many minutes of micro-rest, scattered across a single day. Like small commas in a very long sentence. The night, of course, is the long version of that small offering, and the paragraph break the eyes have been waiting for. And tonight, that paragraph break is finally arriving, and there is nowhere else you need to be inside it. Maybe you can let the next blink be a little longer, maybe the one after that, longer still, and the one after that, long enough to be mistaken for sleep. The eyelids are both curtains and caretakers. The lids close to protect the eye from light, dust, and sudden movement. They also help spread tears, keep moisture in, and signal rest to the brain when it's time to begin winding down. In a way, they're more than coverings, they're soft caretakers, looking after a delicate surface day and night, never asking for time off. When sleep approaches, the lids tend to feel heavier, almost as if they're remembering an old familiar duty that they've been performing every night since the very first night you ever slept. They know how to lower without effort. They know how to stay closed. And tonight, perhaps, they'd like to. They are usually the last part of you to give up on the day. Perhaps the chest can soften on the exhale, like a long curtain settling against a still window after a long day of light and small disturbances. Tears don't only spill, they also stay. Invisibly working, we tend to picture tears as the moment something rolls down a cheek and becomes visible to the world. But most of the time, tears are quiet inhabitants living on the eye, smoothing the surface, getting reabsorbed and renewed in a steady inner cycle. The visible drop is rare, The unseen layer is constant, present from the first blink of the morning to the last blink of the night. There's a soft truth in that most of the body's care for itself happens in places no one can see, including yourself. A single tear is only the smallest visible part of something larger and more steady, the way a single ripple is only the visible top of a much wider lake. Most kindness is like that. Most life is like that. The night, too, holds many invisible caretakers. You don't need to count them. You only need to let them work. Sometimes the eyes water before the mind has words. People often describe noticing tears before they realize what they feel inside. This isn't a flaw in their attention. It's a feature of how the nervous system works. Sensations can rise before language catches up, and tears can appear as a quiet signal that something has shifted inside, even before the thinking part of the mind has had time to put a name on it. The mind eventually puts a label on the moment, but the body felt it first. And that order is older than our ability to describe it. There's something gentle about acknowledging that order, especially at night, when words can finally rest, and the body can speak in its own quieter voice. Tonight, the labels can be loose. The labels can be optional. Tonight, the body can speak softly, and the mind doesn't need to translate. There's no one waiting for a translation, and no one would mind if it never arrived. Moisture can be the body's simplest kindness. Among all the complicated systems we have, tears are one of the simplest gifts the body offers. A bit of water, a bit of salt, a thin protective layer offered, again and again, without negotiation, without conditions. It doesn't require effort. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't ask whether the day went well or whether you deserve any small comfort tonight. It simply arrives whenever the eye needs it, hour after hour. In the quiet of evening, that small kindness can be a model for everything else. Small offerings, repeated quietly, are usually enough. The grand gestures we sometimes wait for are often less important than the soft, constant ones we forget to count. Perhaps the night can be like that too. A soft, small kindness that returns each evening, expecting nothing, but offering itself anyway. The eye keeps its own quiet housekeeping through the night. While you sleep, the eyes are still being cared for in their own quiet way. The lids stay closed. Moisture is preserved. The surface refreshes. And small repairs continue throughout the long, dark hours. None of this requires your awareness, your permission, or your gratitude. The body has been doing this every night you've ever lived, beginning with nights you don't remember, trusting that long, faithful pattern can be its own kind of comfort. Especially when the day has felt uncertain, there is nothing you need to manage right now. There is nothing the eyes need from you in this moment. The smallest things are already in good hands, and those hands have been steady for a very long time. And as this first cluster gently closes, the night can take over for a while. You can simply rest with it and let it take over the quiet work that you no longer need to remember to do. Tears can act as a social signal that invites gentleness. Researchers studying emotion often describe tears as more than a private event happening behind a single pair of eyes. When someone cries softly, the people nearby tend to soften too, almost without noticing it. Voices lower, movements slow. the atmosphere shifts toward care without anyone announcing the change. In gentle research language, tears can function as a wordless message, an invitation for tenderness, rather than a demand for explanation. They communicate something that words sometimes can't reach, and they ask for very little in return. And like all soft signals, they can be received without anything dramatic following. Anut, a quiet presence. A small kindness can be enough to honor what was offered. The body, in those moments, has spoken on its own behalf, in its own old language. Whenever you're ready, let the belly be unguarded, breathing on its own time, the way a sleeping animal trusts the room around it without needing to check that the room is safe. Faces with tears are often read as more sincere. In studies of facial perception, tears can subtly change how an expression is interpreted by the people seeing it. The same face, with or without a soft glistening, can be read differently, often as more honest, more reachable, more in need of warmth from others. There's no judgment in this. It's simply a quiet feature of how humans notice each other across a room or a kitchen table. The body, it seems, has its own gentle alphabet, written partly in moisture and partly in the slowness around it. None of this requires anyone to perform anything. The signals are simply read, the way wind is read by leaves, without any conscious effort on either side. Perhaps tonight, no one needs to read your face. You can simply rest behind it, the way you might rest behind a closed door at the end of a long, full day. People respond differently to tears depending on context. A tear in a crowded room is met differently than a tear in a quiet conversation between two people who know each other well. Cultural expectations, relationships, and the timing of the moment all shape the response on either side. Researchers describe how the same act of crying can feel like relief in one setting and like exposure in another. And neither response is wrong, only different. None of this is a flaw in human nature. It just means tears, like all signals, depend on the soil they fall into. Tonight, the soil can be soft. There is no audience here. There are no expectations to navigate. There is only the dark room and your own gentle presence inside it. Just the dark, the breath, and the quiet permission to feel anything that arrives, without having to make sense of it for anyone else, including yourself. Support can change what crying feels like afterward. When someone is met with kindness, while or after crying, the experience often becomes lighter, not because the feeling disappears, but because the body felt accompanied through it. Studies of emotion regulation describe how social support can soften the after effect of emotional moments, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days. Even imagine support, like remembering a kind voice from years ago, can shift the inner weather a little, gently, and without anyone noticing. None of this is required for sleep tonight, of course, but it can help to know that gentleness, real or remembered, can travel into the night with you, the way a small lit lantern can travel down a dim hallway. Perhaps tonight, you can be the kind voice you needed earlier today, the hand that listens, the room that doesn't ask why. Judgment can make the same tears feel heavier. When tears are met with criticism or impatience, the body can tighten rather than release. Researchers note that context matters as much as physiology in shaping how an emotional moment is remembered later. sometimes much later. This isn't about blaming anyone for past responses. It's simply useful to recognize that softer environments tend to invite softer aftermaths, the way warmer water tends to invite a tighter knot to loosen. The good news is that the night you create around yourself counts as an environment in its own right. A dim room, a long exhale, a quiet phrase of permission. These are all part of the soil that surrounds you tonight. And the soil is gentle. There is no judgment in the dark, only space. And space, as it turns out, is one of the kinder things the night provides. Quiet tears can be private, almost like a whispered message. Not every tear is meant for anyone else, including the person crying them. Some are small, as brief, and almost unnoticed, even by the eyes producing them. They might appear during a quiet song, a memory that surfaced without warning, a moment of unexpected tenderness in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. They aren't asking to be witnessed. They're simply moving through, the way a small breeze moves through a sleeping house. Researchers sometimes describe these as low arousal emotional moments, gentle, internal, easily overlooked, and there's a kind of dignity in that privacy. The night is also like that. Most of what happens at night is unwitnessed and still meaningful in its own quiet way. You might feel the feet growing warmer, heavier, as if the day is settling into the soles, ready to be left behind on the bed when sleep finally arrives. Crying can reduce the need for explanation. Sometimes a soft tear says more than a paragraph would have. People often describe how, after crying, the urgency to explain themselves quietly fades, like a tide that has finished its work for the day. The body has already spoken. Words that felt necessary a moment earlier can feel optional now, and sometimes even unnecessary. This is a small, gentle gift of emotional release. It can lower the pressure to produce coherence on demand. Tonight, you don't have to produce coherence either. The night listens fluently, in any language including silence, including breath, including the soft sound of nothing needing to be said. The room understands without being told. Perhaps the room can hold what you don't have words for. It has held many things, in many nights, and it still has room for one more. Humans often learn tear rules from culture and family, how freely a person cries, where they cry, and around whom these are often shaped by the families and cultures we grow up in. Long before we have any choice in the matter, researchers studying emotion describe how display rules can quietly affect even physiological signals like tears, without anyone consciously deciding to follow them. Some people learn that tears are welcomed. Others learn that tears should be hidden. None of these patterns are right or wrong. They're just learned, the way languages and table manners are learned. And the lovely thing is, learning can also continue gently into adulthood. At any age, the dark, in particular, can be a kind teacher, and a patient one. Tonight, perhaps a few old rules can rest, and a softer one can take their place, even if only for one night, even if only for one breath at a time. Some tears arrive in relief, not only sadness. Tears are often associated with grief, but they show up in many other contexts: relief, gratitude, awe, beauty, reunion, and even quiet humor that catches the body off guard. Researchers describe how the body's tear response is more about emotional intensity than about a specific kind of feeling. The same eyes can fill at the end of a hard day and at the beginning of a tender one, and both can feel oddly similar from the inside. There's something hopeful in that variety. Tears are not a marker of one mood. They're a marker of being moved, in whatever direction the inner weather is moving today. And being moved, in any direction, is a kind of being alive. And tonight, it's okay to be moved gently, even by something as small as a phrase that simply lets you rest, or a blanket that meets the body in exactly the right way. Tears can appear at reunions, gratitude, and tenderness, a familiar voice, a long-awaited hug, a small, unexpected kindness from a stranger. Each of these can prompt soft tears in many people, sometimes catching them by surprise. The nervous system seems to respond to the moment when something held tight is finally allowed to soften. The way a hand that has been clenched all day finally opens by the fire. In gentle research terms, this can be described as a relaxation response after sustained low-grade vigilance throughout the day. The body says it's safe to let go now, and it does. Sometimes through the eyes, sometimes through a long breath. Tonight is one of those quiet moments. Even without an event to mark it, the room is the reunion, a soft homecoming with the body itself, just by lying still. No travel required, no introductions needed, only the bed, and the breath, and the dark. The presence of a safe listener can soften the nervous system. Researchers studying co-regulation describe how being near a calm, attentive person can lower stress signals throughout the body. Often within minutes, heart rates can sink slightly, breathing can deepen. Tears, when they appear, can move through more gently, finding less resistance on the way out. Even an imagined safe listener, a memory, a comforting voice from long ago, a fictional character read about once and never forgotten can produce some of these effects. Tonight, perhaps the narrator's voice can be a small stand-in present, quiet, asking nothing, offering something. Receiving care doesn't need to be earned, and tonight, it can simply be received, without paying anything in return. Perhaps the eyelids can be gently weighted, like soft fabric falling slowly across a window in the last warm minute of evening, when no further light is required. Even imagined comfort can shift the body's tone. The mind has a quiet ability to evoke states that the body responds to. Imagining a warm beach, a kind face, or a slow walk through trees can change breathing, posture, and tension throughout the body. This isn't magic. It's something researchers describe as embodied imagery, and it works best when allowed to be soft and slow rather than vivid and effortful. Tonight, you don't have to imagine anything in particular if nothing comes easily. You can simply allow whatever calming images arrive on their own, without having to work for them. They are also part of how the body remembers safety, drawing on a quiet library it has been keeping for years. A soft picture, a soft breath either is enough. Sometimes both arrive together, sometimes neither arrives. The night is patient with all of these. A tear can say I'm here without asking anything back. One of the gentler functions of tears is presence, simply marking that something is being felt right now. In this body, in this moment, researchers describe how emotional tears can convey state without demanding action from anyone. They are not transactions. They are not requests. They are not necessarily even messages. In some cases, they can simply be the body's way of saying, "I'm present in this moment," without needing the moment to mean anything specific. Tonight, that's all that's needed too. To be present with the bed, the breath, the dark, the body's whole job, for the next while, is just to be here, without asking, without explaining. The room remembers you. The room has remembered every night you've ever spent inside it. Social bonding often grows around vulnerability. Researchers studying close relationships often describe how moments of softness, including tears, including silence, including the small admissions that arrive when defense is lower, can deepen connection between people. The body, in being honest, invites others to be honest too. The way one open window invites another. This isn't required for sleep tonight, but it's a quiet truth worth carrying into the dark. Tonight, even your own tenderness with yourself counts as a kind of bonding. You don't need anyone else here to receive it. The mind can be a friendly companion to the body, just for a little while, and the body can return the kindness in equal measure. Perhaps that companionship is the simplest form of rest. Two parts of oneself. Finally, on the same side, at the end of the day, the same event can produce different tear responses across people. Two people can sit through the same conversation, the same song, the same goodbye, and one might cry while the other doesn't. Even though both were equally moved on the inside, this isn't a measure of feeling, and it's not a competition. Researchers note that crying thresholds vary widely, shaped by biology, history, context, and even what the body ate for dinner. There is no correct amount of tears for any moment in a human life. Whatever tonight asks of you or doesn't is part of being human and is enough exactly as it is. Quiet listening is also a complete response to the day. Tonight, the body can express in its own quiet dialect, whichever shape that takes, and whichever shape it doesn't take. Both are welcome here. Some people cry easily, some rarely do. Both can be normal. Researchers studying individual differences describe a wide range of tear thresholds across the population. Some people experience emotional tears frequently, sometimes several times in a single week. Others rarely or never do, even during moments that move them deeply. Neither pattern is healthier than the other, and neither is more emotionally honest. The body has many ways to release tension and signal feeling, and tears are only one of them, available to some bodies more easily than others. Sleep itself is another doorway. Long exhales are another. Stillness is another. Tonight, your body can choose whichever doorway is easiest, and none of them are required for anything to be okay. Let the fingertips loosen their tiny effort, like petals letting the morning hold them, no longer needing to grip even the smallest thing. Holding back tears can take effort. The body can feel. Trying to keep tears in often involves muscular tension around the throat, ears, eyes, and chest, sometimes spreading further into the shoulders and stomach. Researchers describe this as the cost of suppression, and the cost is usually small in the moment, but can quietly accumulate across a long day. It doesn't mean suppression is wrong. Sometimes it's the right choice for the situation. And the body knows this. But the body also keeps a quiet record of what it held. And sometimes the record asks to be settled later, in private. Tonight, the record can soften. There's nothing here to hold back, and nothing here to keep tight. The muscles can be off duty for a while. Whatever was held earlier today can quietly be put down, just for the night. The morning can decide whether to pick any of it back up. Allowing tears can sometimes reduce internal friction, when the body lets a feeling move through, rather than holding it in place. The cost of holding can drop noticeably. Researchers describe this as a kind of internal coherence when expression and feeling align. The system has less work to do, less monitoring to perform, less effort to keep in storage. This doesn't mean tears must appear tonight, or any night. It only means that whatever the body offers tonight, soft tears, soft breath, soft thought, or none of these can be allowed without resistance. The friction of opposing the body is what often keeps the mind awake long past the hour when it might have rested. Perhaps tonight is the night the inside and the outside can agree, even if only about something as small as the next breath. Tears can change breathing and posture in subtle ways. When emotional tears arise, breathing often shifts, sometimes shallow at first. Then, deeper as the body lets out a held pattern that was waiting to be released. Posture may soften, shoulders may drop. The chest may release a small amount of tightness it didn't know it was carrying. Researchers describe these as part of an autonomic shift toward rest. Even in the middle of an otherwise busy day, none of it has to happen tonight. Of course. But knowing that the body has these built-in pathways can be a quiet reassurance. The system already knows how to come down, even when the mind is still figuring it out. And down is, in many ways, the right direction for sleep. Down is where the bed is. Down is where the breath has been waiting all day to go. The eyes can become a doorway for emotional release. Of all the body's organs, the eyes are unusually expressive, perhaps the most expressive of all. Tears, blinks, gaze direction, the subtle softening of the eyelids, each of these can communicate something to the world. Often, before the person speaking with them has decided to say anything, researchers studying nonverbal communication describe how much of human connection passes through this small region of the face. Tonight, the eyes don't have to communicate anything to anyone. They can simply close, arrest, and let the rest of the body settle around them. The doorway can be allowed to remain quiet for the night, with no one passing through. A closed door can also be a kindness, especially after a long day of being open to so many things. Being seen can be calming when it comes with softness. Researchers studying caregiving and co-regulation describe how being witnessed in a safe way can lower physiological stress signals throughout the body. The key word, they note, is safe. Being looked at without softness can feel sharp, and the body knows the difference, even when the mind doesn't articulate it. Being seen with softness can feel like a kind of gentle blanket made of nothing more than attention. Tonight, the dark is a quiet form of being seen by yourself, a gentle, unjudging awareness, asking nothing in return. You don't need to perform. You don't need to summarize the day. The witness is patient and asks for nothing tonight. Maybe the space between the brows can widen, as if a small, tight knot has agreed to rest. at least for tonight, and possibly for longer than that. Tears can be a non-verbal bridge between two nervous systems. When two people sit together and one is moved to soft tears, both nervous systems can shift in subtle ways without either person trying to make it happen. Researchers describe how cues like slowed breathing, softened voice, and tears can synchronize between people. The way two pendulums on the same wall slowly come into rhythm. This isn't a guarantee in every situation, but it's a quiet possibility that often unfolds without anyone noticing. Tonight, the bridge can also exist between parts of you, the part that worked all day and the part that's ready to rest. They can meet softly here, without one having to convince the other of anything. Two halves of a self, finally arriving at the same hour, in the same room, on the same patient breath. Quiet tears can be a gentle boundary, not a performance. Some tears arrive simply to mark that something is too much, or too tender, or too close for comfort right now. They aren't a performance for anyone else, and they aren't a request for intervention. They're closer to a soft fence. The body builds in real time, saying this matters, please slow down, please notice. Researchers describe this as nonverbal boundary setting, an old skill that doesn't require any words at all. Tonight, you don't need to set any boundaries. The night already does it for you. By gathering the world into a smaller circle around the bed, the world becomes smaller. The room becomes a soft circle, and you're inside it. A small, calm circle, drawn in quiet around the bed, with you safely on the inside of it. Sometimes tears come when safety finally arrives. It's a common observation that people often cry not at the moment of stress, but afterward, when the danger or pressure has passed, and the body finally has space to release what it was holding. Researchers describe this as a delayed parasympathetic release, a natural rebalancing of the system. The body was holding itself together for the sake of the moment, doing exactly what was needed, and only later did it let down its quiet vigilance. Tonight, the day's small pressures can also be allowed to let down. There's no schedule for release. It comes when the body trusts the space around it enough to soften, and the bed is a space the body has already learned to trust. Perhaps trust is already arriving, slowly, like steam rising from warm tea on a cold evening, asking nothing of you in return. A soft response to tears can teach the body it's okay, whether real or imagined. A kind response to one's own emotions can become part of how the body learns over time. Researchers describe self-compassion as a learnable skill, one that affects nervous system patterns over weeks and months and years. Often quietly. Tonight, you don't have to do anything elaborate to practice it. A simple inner phrase, "It's okay. This is allowed." You can rest, can be like a soft hand on the body's shoulder. Repeated kindness, even in small doses, becomes part of the night's atmosphere, and the atmosphere shapes the body. Even one phrase, said gently to oneself in the dark, counts towards something larger. And as this second cluster gently closes, the room can hold whatever has surfaced. You don't have to. The room is bigger than any single feeling. Crying often changes, breathing first, then slowly settles. When emotional tears arise, breathing often becomes uneven for a few moments. Short inhales, slightly held exhales, a small catch in the throat that the body doesn't seem to plan. Researchers describe this as part of the body's initial autonomic response, the system briefly working a little harder before it settles. Then, as the wave passes, breathing tends to deepen and slow on its own, without any instruction from the mind. The chest can soften, the shoulders can drop. The system has its own rhythm of arrival and departure, and it usually doesn't need our help to find its way back to baseline. Tonight, even without tears, the breath can follow the same gentle arc, a little uneven at first, then steady, then slow, then almost forgotten. You might let the thighs sink into support, as if the bed has been waiting all day to receive them, and is finally allowed to do its quiet work. The body can move from arousal toward rest in small steps. Rest doesn't usually arrive all at once. The way a light switch flips a room dark, the nervous system tends to settle in stages, first the breath, then the muscles, then the thoughts, then deeper layers we may not even notice consciously. Researchers describe this as a graded shift, not a flipped switch, and they note that the stages can take their own time, sometimes minutes, sometimes longer. So if tonight feels slow at first, that's part of the design rather than a sign of failure. Each small softening adds to the next, and the next, and the one after that. There's no rush and no failure if the steps take their time finding their way down. A staircase made of breath, descending one quiet step at a time, with no one waiting at the bottom to time you. The autonomic nervous system shifts like tides, not switches. People sometimes imagine the body as having one mode for stress and another for rest, with a clean line between them. In reality, researchers describe a more fluid picture. The system flows back and forth, often blending both states in small proportions, even within a single quiet hour. So the body isn't broken if it doesn't feel completely calm yet. It's simply still in transition. The way a beach at dusk is still in transition between day and night. Tides don't decide, they move. And tonight, the body can move without being told, finding its own way back toward the shore where rest waits. A gentle current, always heading back toward the shore of rest. Even when the surface looks like it isn't moving at all, muscle tension can soften after an emotional release, after a wave of feeling, even a quiet one. Muscles often let go in small amounts around the jaw, the eyes, the shoulders, the hands, sometimes spreading further into the back and the small of the spine. Researchers describe this as post-release relaxation, and they note it doesn't require effort or technique. The body simply remembers it doesn't need to hold whatever it was holding. Tonight, you don't have to wait for any release at all. You can offer the same gift, directly permission for the muscles to be done with their day, even if briefly, even if just for the next breath. The muscles will accept the offer without asking why. A small surrender, not because something was conquered, but because nothing more is needed from the body right now. The throat and face hold many small tensions. A surprising amount of daily tension settles in the small muscles of the face and throat from talking, swallowing, expressing, holding back what wasn't meant to be said. Researchers studying tension patterns describe how these areas often soften only when we deliberately invite them to, since they tend to stay quietly contracted. Otherwise, a long exhale can help. A soft swallow can help. Even imagining warm air around the throat can help. Tonight, those tiny muscles can be allowed to be off duty. The day's small carryings have done their work. The face can become heavier on the pillow, a little less interested in expression for the next while. A quiet undoing of small knots, like loosening a thread that no longer needs to hold a button in place. Warmth can feel like permission for the body to unclench. Warmth of a blanket, a room, a cup of tea, a soft light, the body of another person, even the imagined memory of warmth, can act as a quiet signal of safety to the nervous system. Researchers studying thermal comfort describe how warmth can lower vigilance and ease the transition into rest, often without the person realizing what's happening. It's not magic, it's biology that has been with us a long time. Older than any one culture or language. Tonight, even small warmths count: warm socks, a warm pillow, a warm imagining of sunlight. The body trusts warmth almost as much as it trusts gravity. And tonight, both are with you. Perhaps the arms can feel pleasantly distant, as though they have already begun their own quiet drift towards sleep, well ahead of the rest of you. Dim light can reduce stimulation and invite calm. When light fades, the brain receives a signal that the day is winding down and that night mode functions can begin to come online. Researchers describe this as a circadian cue. Low light helps shift the body toward rest in subtle, layered ways. The eyes appreciate it. The mind softens around it. Even the skin, in its own quiet way, registers the dim and responds. Tonight, the dim of the room or the dark behind closed lids can be allowed to do its quiet work without supervision. There's nothing to do but receive less light and let the body translate that into less alertness, less effort, less wakefulness. A room becoming a small lantern of quiet, with the light dimming on its own, exactly when it's needed. A slower exhale can become a safety signal. When the exhale lengthens, even by a small amount, the nervous system tends to interpret this as things are okay enough. Researchers studying breathing patterns describe how slow exhalation activates calming branches of the autonomic system. And they note this happens without any technique required. You don't have to count, and you don't have to perform anything. Tonight, the body can simply notice when an exhale is a little longer than the inhale, and let that pattern repeat at its own pace. The breath knows the way home, and it has known the way for as long as you've been breathing. Each long exhale, a small goodnight to the day, each one a little longer than the last, until even time becomes optional. Stillness can feel unfamiliar at first, then comforting. For many people, stillness is the most unusual part of the day, more unusual than sleep itself. The body, having been busy, can take a few moments, sometimes longer, to recognize that it doesn't need to keep moving, doesn't need to keep producing anything. Researchers describe this as a settling phase, often felt as a faint restlessness before deeper calm sets in. If you notice that tonight, it's not a sign of failure, it's the body learning, again, what stillness feels like. The way it had to learn the first time, and the second time, and every time after that. And learning, like sleep, takes a little time. A guest who eventually finds the comfortable chair, even after spending a few minutes wondering where to sit. Some research explores crying as a self-soothing behavior. Researchers have proposed that crying may sometimes function as a self-soothing process, helping the body shift toward calm after stress. The findings are careful and context-dependent. Not every cry brings relief, and the effect can depend on environment, social support, timing, and how the person feels about crying in the first place. Still, it's gentle to know that the body has many possible doorways toward rest, and they don't all look the same from the outside. Tears are one, breath is another, stillness is another. Tonight, you don't have to choose between them. The body chooses for you, often without telling you which door it picked. A door opens softly, and the room beyond it is quieter than expected. Quieter, perhaps, than any other room in the house tonight. The after of crying may depend on context and timing. Researchers describe how the experience after crying isn't a single guaranteed effect across all people and all situations. Some people feel lighter, others feel tired or tender, others feel both at once, mixed together in a way that's hard to name. The setting, the relationships nearby, the time elapsed, and the person's general state all play roles in shaping what comes next. None of these outcomes are wrong, and none of them mean anything when poorly. Tonight, you can let go of any expectation about how feelings should resolve themselves. The body has its own clock for these things, and the clock is gentler than we sometimes give it credit for being. Patience, in the most ordinary sense, can be a kind of medicine. If you'd like, return to the jaw, softer than before, like an old stone slowly sinking into warm sand at the edge of an unhurried tide. Relief can be immediate or quietly delayed. Sometimes the relief after a wave of feeling arrives within minutes, fast enough to feel like a single piece. Sometimes it takes the rest of the evening, or the night, or the next morning to fully arrive, and we may not realize it has shown up until it's already there. Researchers studying emotion describe how the timeline of recovery varies between people and situations, and there's no template for getting it right. The body is not late. It's simply on its own schedule, the schedule that has always worked for it. Tonight, you don't need to chase a feeling of done. The night will keep working on the soft edges. Even while you sleep, some kinds of healing arrive on the slowest trains, and they always reach the station. Eventually, the body often seeks quiet, water, and warmth after emotion. After an emotional moment, many people instinctively reach for simple things: a glass of water, a quiet room, a warm blanket, a soft surface to lean against. Researchers describe this as a form of physiological recovery, seeking the body, asking for the basics it needs to settle, the way it has asked for them across centuries. None of these are demands, they're soft requests, easy to honor when noticed. Tonight, even the imagined version of those comforts can be enough to send the same signal: a glass of cool water somewhere in the mind, a warm room around the body, a quiet space inside the chest where nothing is being asked. 3 small kindnesses, available even at night, available even now, available without anyone needing to bring them. Gentle touch can create a sense of boundary and safety. A hand on the chest, a soft pillow against the cheek, the weight of a blanket, the contact of bare feet against fabric. All of these can communicate boundary and safety to the nervous system without a single word. Researchers describe this as proprioceptive grounding, and they note it works even when the touch is very light. The body learns where it ends and where the world begins. And within that knowing, it can rest more easily. Tonight, the bed itself is doing some of this work for you. The contact between the body and the surface becomes a quiet anchor, the way a small boat is anchored by a single soft rope to a still dock. A small, settling weight, like a paperweight on the corner of the day, holding the loose pages in place until morning. Posture can shift, shoulders drop, jaw loosens. When the body settles, posture often follows, sometimes dramatically and sometimes in millimeters. Shoulders drop, the jaw loosens, the hands open slightly. Even the position of the tongue inside the mouth can soften, releasing a small grip that no one notices during the day. Researchers describe these as small markers of parasympathetic activation, visible if you look closely but easy to miss if you don't. None of them have to be deliberate or chosen. Tonight, you can simply notice if any of them have already happened on their own. If not, they will. The body is patient with its own schedule, and the schedule is friendly. A slow rearrangement of bones into their resting shape, a shape they have known since the very first night you ever slept. The absence of urgency can lower internal alertness. Researchers studying stress describe how the absence of urgency deadlines, decisions, things, plans, things that feel like they need to happen now, can lower vigilance more than any specific calming technique. The body, when it senses no demand, can begin to release what it was holding without any prompting. Tonight, the absence is real. There's nothing demanding anything from you in this moment. There's nothing to plan, nothing to win, nothing to finish before sleep. The mind may take a few minutes to believe it, and that's fine, but the body usually believes it sooner, especially in the dark, especially when the bed has already been arranged for resting. Let the shoulder blades settle like leaves on the surface of a still pond, neither sinking nor floating, simply resting where they fell. Soft repetition can help attention let go. Repetition can act as a kind of gentle hypnosis for the mind. In the most everyday sense of the word, soft phrases, slow breaths, recurring images, the steady rhythm of waves, these can ease attention away from sharp focus towards something more like a soft glow. Researchers describe this as relaxation through monotonization, and they note it has been used across many cultures for many generations. The mind, finding nothing new and nothing alarming, eventually softens its grip on whatever it was holding. Tonight, the steady rhythm of these facts can do the same quiet work. You don't have to track them. You only have to let them pass. The way you might let snow pass against a dark window, a gentle rain against the same window, again and again, until the window itself becomes part of the rain. Silence can be a comfort, not an emptiness. People sometimes worry that silence will feel uncomfortable, but in many cases, the nervous system reads silence as safety rather than absence. There's nothing alarming in silence, nothing demanding, nothing to interpret or respond to. Researchers describe how moments of quiet can lower physiological arousal, sometimes more effectively than soothing music or guided sound. Tonight, between the words, There are small spaces of quiet. They aren't gaps in something else. They're part of the rest itself, doing their own quiet work alongside the words. The space between sounds is sometimes more soothing than the sounds, especially at the end of a long day. A pause that knows how to be enough. A pause that doesn't need to apologize for being a pause. The body's rhythm can return when it stops being chased. When you try too hard to relax, the trying itself can become a small form of arousal that delays what you were trying to find. Researchers describe this as the effort paradox. The more you push for calm, the more elusive calm tends to become. Letting the body have its rhythm without managing it, without supervising it, without measuring whether it's working, often allows that rhythm to return on its own. Tonight, you don't have to perform stillness for anyone, including yourself. The stillness can perform itself, given a little space and the absence of pressure. The body has done this many times before. A bird settling onto a branch, only because no one is watching, and the branch is exactly where it always was. A tearful moment can be a small reset point. Some researchers describe emotional tears as a kind of physiological pause, a moment when the body shifts gears between two states, briefly stepping out of one mode and into another. Whether or not the experience feels positive in the moment, the body has often used it to reorganize quietly behind the scenes. Tonight, no tears are needed for that reorganization to happen. Sleep itself is a much longer pause, and the body uses it to recalibrate everything from mood to memory to small repairs in tissues you'll never see. The reset is already underway, just by your willingness to lie still and let the night do its work. A long, soft exhale at the end of the day's last sentence, before the next page is turned. Not every tear needs a story. Some tears arrive without a clear cause, a song that wasn't supposed to mean anything, a glance at an ordinary object, a memory you can't quite name, even after it surfaces. Researchers describe this as a low-resolution emotional response, a body knowing something the mind hasn't put into words yet, and may never put into words at all. There's no obligation to explain it, and no requirement that meaning be assigned. Tonight, even the day's small, unnamed feelings can be allowed to exist without a story attached. They don't need to be solved. The night doesn't ask for stories. It only asks for breath. Perhaps the mind can quiet as the forehead smooths. Like fog, lifting from a dark valley one slow degree at a time. Not every story needs a solution tonight. The mind is sometimes a small problem solver that doesn't know when to stop, especially at night when the world is quieter and there's room to think. At night, every unfinished issue can feel suddenly important, dressed up in extra weight that it didn't have during the day. Researchers describe this as nighttime cognitive activation, and they note it's a normal feature of how the brain handles transitions towards sleep. It's not a sign that anything is wrong. It's just the mind doing what it usually does. Tonight, there's nothing that needs solving in the dark. The morning will arrive with its own clarity. The night is for rest, not for resolution. Let the unfinished sentences sit on the desk until tomorrow. They will still be there. They are very patient. The body can carry feelings without being broken. It's a quiet truth that bodies are capable of carrying many feelings at once. Tenderness, weariness, a small ache somewhere, a small lightness somewhere else, mixed together in ways the mind doesn't always know how to name. Researchers describe this as emotional complexity, and they note it's a sign of richness, not a sign of malfunction. None of it means anything is wrong. Tonight, the body can hold whatever it's holding without judgment from anyone, including you. Carrying is a strength, not a flaw, and it has gotten you here. Rest is one of the simplest ways the body sets things down for a while, without losing them, just to take a break. A wide pair of arms, neither tired nor unkind, capable of holding more than seems possible from the outside. Tenderness can be a physiological state, not only an idea. Tenderness is sometimes spoken about as if it were only emotional, only a thought or a wish or a word in a card. But researchers describe how tenderness can be a measurable bodily state: softer muscles, slower breath, warmer hands, a small change in the eyes. Tonight, that state is not far away. It can arrive simply because the body is in a safe enough place, with no one asking anything difficult of it. There's no concept required and no special technique. The body knows how to be tender without any instructions, especially toward itself. It has been waiting for the chance, a gentle warmth filling the room from the inside out. The way warmth fills a small house when the fire has been burning quietly for an hour. Sometimes rest begins with permission, not effort. Of all the small skills around sleep, permission may be the most underrated and the most overlooked. Researchers studying insomnia describe how the harder one tries to fall asleep, the more elusive sleep often becomes a paradox the body seems to recognize even when the mind doesn't. But when the body is given permission to rest, without demand and without timeline, the system tends to take that permission seriously and act on it, sometimes more quickly than expected. Tonight, you don't have to do anything to earn the next breath of stillness. Permission is enough. Permission has always been enough. It just doesn't always remember to give itself. And as this third cluster gently closes, the body can keep softening, with nothing to prove and nothing to hold for the rest of the night. Sleep and emotion influence each other in both directions. Researchers describe a two-way relationship between sleep and emotion, with each one quietly shaping the other across days and weeks. A heavy day can make a night feel restless, and a restless night can make the next day feel heavier than it would otherwise. This loop is normal, and it isn't a verdict about anything in particular. It's just one of the soft patterns of being alive in a body that sleeps. Tonight, you don't have to fix the loop. You only have to step out of it for a little while. The way you might step out of a long conversation just to breathe in another room. The bed is a soft pause in the cycle, where neither side has to argue with the other. Sleep itself begins to settle the equation. Gently and without instructions, you might allow the palms to open, as if the day were finally allowed to leave them. The fingers can be quiet, with nothing to grip and nothing to refuse. Intense days can make nights lighter and less settled. Studies of daily affect and sleep describe how high arousal days, whether stressful or exciting, often lead to lighter, more fragmented sleep at first. The body is still buzzing a little when it lies down, the engine humming quietly even after the keys have been put away. Researchers note this isn't a flaw, it's part of how arousal lingers, slowly fading rather than stopping all at once. Tonight, even after a busy day, the body can begin to bring its volume down at its own pace. the mind may take longer than the body to catch up. And that's okay too. There's no race between them. And no one keeps score. A bright bulb slowly dimming inside a soft lampshade, fading by degrees you can almost see, until the room is mostly dark. Calm. Low arousal feelings can support sleep onset. Research on emotion and sleep finds that calmer state softness, contentment, gentle tenderness, a kind of quiet neutrality are often associated with shorter time to fall asleep. The body interprets low arousal as a signal that night mode is safe, and it tends to act on that signal more readily than on any deliberate effort. Tonight, the goal isn't to feel any particular emotion, and there's no quiz at the end. It's only to allow the volume to drop a little. Even small lowering is helpful. The body doesn't need calm to be perfect or complete. It just needs calm to be approached, even from a distance. A volume knob turning slowly counterclockwise, with no destination, only the soft direction of less. The brain processes emotional material differently across sleep stages. Researchers describe how different stages of sleep seem to handle different aspects of memory and emotion, each with its own quiet job to do. Some stages are more involved with consolidating memories, fixing what was learned during the day. Others may be more involved with softening emotional charge, smoothing the rougher edges of what was felt. The science continues to evolve, and the picture is still being drawn. What's gentle to know is that the brain has many quiet jobs at night, and you don't have to supervise any of them. Sleep does its work, whether you understand the work or not. The way many old crafts continue without an audience. A workshop where the lights stay low and the tools work themselves, finishing what was started long after the workshop closed. REM sleep is often discussed as part of emotional memory processing. REM, the dreaming stage, has been studied as a possible time when the brain rebalances emotional memories, softening their edges, integrating their meanings, weaving them into the quieter library of long-term memory. Researchers describe this as a working hypothesis with growing evidence, careful and provisional in the way good science usually is. It doesn't mean dreams are tasks to complete, or that the brain is grading anything. It just means the night is more active than it looks from the outside. Tonight, you don't have to interpret anything that arrives in dreams or anything that doesn't. The body is doing soft work behind the scenes, and the work needs no spectators. A river that quietly sands down the sharp pebbles of the day, carrying them slowly toward a smoother place. Night can amplify feelings because the world grows quiet. When the day's noise drops away, internal signals become easier to hear, sometimes uncomfortably so. A small ache, a small worry, a small tenderness, all of them can feel louder at night than they did during the day. Researchers describe this as relative salience. The same signal becomes more noticeable when nothing else is competing for attention. None of this is a flaw in the night. It's the architecture of quiet, doing exactly what quiet does. Tonight, anything that surfaces can be allowed to be heard, briefly, and then released without further commentary. You don't have to keep listening to anything that doesn't want to settle on its own. Maybe the breath becomes a slow tide, lifting and letting go without effort, taking the small inner sounds with it as it goes. Less external noise can make internal signals easier to notice. This is the gentle flip side of nighttime. Without the world's distraction, the body can finally sense itself. The way a quiet room finally lets you hear your own breath. Researchers describe this as interoception awareness of internal states, a sense that has its own subtle range and texture. Sometimes that awareness brings comfort. Sometimes it brings tenderness. Either is okay tonight. You don't need to evaluate what arises in the dark. You can let signals pass through. The way distant sounds pass through a quiet room without being asked to identify themselves at the door. A house where every small floorboard is finally heard and then forgotten, allowed to creak in peace. The brain can be a gentle watchman at the edge of sleep. Some part of the brain stays alert at night, scanning quietly for safety. The way a porch light stays on even when no one is expected. Researchers describe this as a vigilant system that gradually quiets as deeper sleep arrives. Knowing this can be reassuring. The watchman isn't a problem. It's a protector that has done its job for as long as you've had a brain. Tonight, the watchman can take a softer shift. The way an old guard might rest a little more once the night feels secure. There is little to guard. The room is quiet. The body is supported. And the breath is steady enough to keep watch on its own. A friendly figure dimming the lanterns one by one along the hallway, telling each one it can rest now. Understanding that role can reduce self-judgment. When the mind takes a while to settle into sleep, it's tempting to read that delay as a failure of some kind, a personal shortcoming. But researchers describe nighttime alertness as a normal feature of being human, present to varying degrees in nearly everyone. Knowing this can soften the inner commentary, the way a gentle teacher can soften a classroom that has become too anxious about a single test. Tonight, if the mind drifts to thoughts, that drifting is part of the design, not a sign that something is wrong. You can let those thoughts pass without grading them. The night is generous with second chances, and third chances, and as many chances as anyone needs. A gentle release from the small inner critic, who sometimes forgets that nighttime is its time to rest too. Predictability can lower cognitive load. A predictable nighttime structure, similar bedtimes, familiar surroundings, gentle routines that don't ask much of the mind can quietly reduce mental effort. Sometimes more than any specific calming technique. Researchers describe how predictability supports parasympathetic shifts toward rest, in part by reducing the number of decisions the mind has to make, even within a single hour. Predictability helps. The repeated rhythm of these facts is a kind of small predictability. Each one arrives, settles for a moment, and gives way to the next. The mind doesn't have to work hard to follow, and following isn't even required. A familiarité, marking time without urgency, returning at the same soft hour every night. A steady rhythm can feel like a lullaby for attention. Many cultures use lullabies for a reason that runs deeper than tradition. The repeating melody, the predictable phrasing, the soft rise and fall of the voice, all of these soothe attention in a way that has been with us for thousands of years. Researchers describe lullaby effects as part of broader entrainment, where attention follows a steady external pattern and gradually softens its own grip. Tonight, the steady pacing of these sentences can act in a similar way. You don't have to follow closely. The rhythm itself is doing some of the work, the way a hand on a cradle does most of the work, even when the song is only humming. Whenever you're ready, let the belly rise and fall without guidance, the way a small boat rests against a quiet dock through a long, calm night. Soft language can reduce arousal compared with hard directives. Researchers studying instructional language describe how words like must and should can subtly raise arousal in listeners, while words like perhaps and maybe tend to lower it, even when the underlying message is the same. Sleep content often deliberately uses soft language to support rest rather than performance. Tonight, the language around you is shaped to support release rather than effort. There's nothing for you to obey and nothing for you to refuse. The words are companions, not commanders. They walk alongside you, not in front of you, and they don't mind if you fall behind. A path that invites rather than instructs. A path that doesn't mind which step you take next. Permission-first phrasing can help the body feel safer. Researchers note that permission-based phrasing, if you'd like, whenever you're ready, you might notice signals lower stakes to the nervous system. Often within a few seconds, the body interprets it as, I have a choice here, and the choice is mine. That sense of choice often allows release more easily than a command would, because release that has been chosen feels different from release that has been demanded. Tonight, every soft phrase is a tiny doorway. You don't have to walk through any of them. They're simply available, and they will still be available the next time you pass by. Many small open doors, none of them needing to be entered, all of them happy to be doors. Comfort reframes can turn sharp facts into gentle ones. Sleep content often reframes potentially sharp information as comfort, knowing that the same fact can land very differently depending on how it's offered. The same piece of information about the brain or the body can be told in a way that creates anxiety or in a way that creates rest. Researchers describe this as cognitive framing, and they note that framing has measurable effects on how the body responds to the same words. Tonight, even the more clinical pieces of information have been softened on their way to you. They're not less true, they're just more sleep-friendly. The way a well-set table is no less of a table for being soft to the eye. A small linguistic kindness, like rounding the corners of a wooden table so that no one bumps against the edges in the dark. Sleep doesn't fix everything, but it can soften edges. It's tempting to imagine sleep as a magical solution to all difficulty, an overnight cure for whatever ailed the day. Researchers are more careful sleep is supportive, not curative, and it works alongside other things rather than replacing them. It doesn't erase what the day brought, but it can quietly reduce the sharpness of how those things feel by morning. Tonight, you don't have to expect everything to be different in the morning, and you don't have to ask sleep to fix anything. You only have to allow this night to do what nights do: soften, settle, and refresh. Gently, and without promise of any specific outcome. A small workshop, smoothing rough edges by morning, asking nothing of the wood except to be wood. Small improvements in rest can change tomorrow's emotional color. Even modest gains in sleep often correlate with subtle shifts in next-day mood. In studies that look closely at how feelings track from one day to the next, researchers describe small but consistent effects: more even mood, slightly easier emotional regulation, more space between feeling and reaction, a gentler internal weather. None of this requires perfect sleep. Tonight, even partial rest counts towards something real. The body uses what it gets and makes do kindly, without complaint. Tomorrow's color may be a little softer because of this hour. Even if the hour didn't feel like much from the inside, perhaps the eyelids can rest a little heavier, like windows closing on a slow rain that has been falling all afternoon. The body learns safety through repetition. Safety isn't usually a single decision the body makes once and remembers forever. Researchers studying nervous system regulation describe how repeated experiences of being safe gradually teach the body to settle more easily. The way a path through a meadow becomes more visible, the more it is walked. Tonight is a small lesson in that long curriculum. Whether or not sleep arrives quickly, the body is gathering quiet evidence that night is okay. That this room is okay. That lying still is okay. That evidence accumulates over time, often without anyone noticing, and it changes how easily future nights feel calm. A long, gentle teaching, taught by ordinary evenings, with no one keeping score and no one taking attendance. Even brief drifting is not failure, it's the point. At some moment, attention will drift away from the words, away from the breath, away from the room, maybe to a memory, maybe to nothing in particular, maybe to a thought that doesn't even have a name. Researchers describe these drifts as part of falling asleep, not obstacles to it. And they note that the mind softening its grip on focus is exactly what's supposed to happen. Tonight, drifting is welcomed in any direction. Coming back is welcome too. Both are part of the same gentle motion. There is no correct place to be inside the next few minutes. A leaf released into a slow, returning current, going wherever the water decides to take it. You can listen without trying to remember. There's nothing in this script you need to retain after the night ends. Researchers studying sleep content describe how forgetting is part of how the format works. Information passes through. The mind softens around it, and rest deepens because nothing has to be held onto. Tonight, you can listen the way you might listen to wind through trees present, but not gripping, aware, but not measuring. There's no quiz, no review, no need to hold on to a single sentence. The words can pass through and leave nothing behind. And that's exactly how they're supposed to behave. A breeze passes, and nothing has to be saved. The room is no emptier afterward, only quieter. The night can hold feelings without needing to solve them. Many feelings don't need to be solved. They only need to be held for a while until they shift on their own. Researchers describe how acceptance, more than analysis, often supports emotional ease over time, especially when the analysis itself has become exhausting. Tonight, the night is doing the holding for you. Whatever surfaces is welcome to surface, briefly, and then sink back into its own quiet place. You don't have to organize anything. The night is a wide, soft container, and it has more room than the day usually provides, more patience than the day usually allows, a bowl of warm water, willing to receive whatever is placed inside it without asking what or why. Quiet tears can be part of the nervous system's settling, coming back to where we began. Quiet tears, when they appear, can be one of the body's softer ways of settling at the end of a day, or the end of a long week, or the end of something the mind hasn't quite named. Researchers studying emotional release describe how tears are sometimes part of a parasympathetic shift, a small letting go on the way to a quieter state. Tonight, no tears are needed for any of this to happen. But if any did appear, in the dark, they would not be a problem to solve. They would be part of the body's careful way of moving toward rest. The body doing what it has always known how to do. Perhaps the whole body can soften now, head to feet, like a long sigh that didn't know it was being held all day. The goal is not to stop emotion, but to let it pass. Researchers studying emotion regulation describe two broad approaches to dealing with feeling: trying to stop a feeling and allowing it to pass through. The second often costs the body less, even when the feeling is intense, because allowing requires less effort than blocking. Tonight, anything that arrives can be allowed to arrive, and then to leave on its own schedule. None of it has to be argued with, justified, or escorted out the door. The mind can stop refereeing for a few hours, and the body can rest more deeply because of it. That, too, is a kind of small freedom, a door open just enough for the wind to walk through, not opened wide enough to invite the storm. The mind can loosen its grip, one breath at a time. Researchers describing the transition into sleep often note that grip mental, muscular, attentional softens gradually rather than all at once. Each breath is a small reset, a tiny window of permission. Each exhale, a small release of whatever was being held just a moment ago. None of this needs to be perfect, and none of it needs to be tracked. Tonight, you can simply let the next breath be a breath, with no instructions attached. The one after that will be easier, almost without you noticing. The one after that, easier still, until easier becomes just how breathing feels. A slow, kind unspooling, the way a length of soft thread slips from a spool when no one is pulling on it. The dark can be a soft room, not a threat. For some, the dark is a long-time companion, a familiar presence that has been around since childhood. For others, it can feel less familiar, more uncertain, more in need of softening before it becomes friendly. Researchers describe how the felt sense of darkness is shaped by both biology and history, and that it can change over time with gentle exposure. Tonight, the dark in this room is small and quiet, and on your side. No matter what it has been on previous nights, there's nothing in it that hasn't always been there. The dark is mostly air, and the air is mostly stillness, and the stillness is mostly rest, waiting to be received. A friend who has been waiting, patiently, all evening, with no plans except to sit with you. Rest can arrive like dew, slow, quiet, and enough. Of all the ways rest arrives, the gentlest is dew, slow, quiet, unmeasured, settling without anyone asking it to. It doesn't announce itself the way rain does. It simply settles on whatever's available, finding the leaves and the grass and the railings without being directed. Researchers describing the onset of sleep often note how subtle the moment is, often missed entirely by the person falling asleep. The crossing happens before anyone notices. Tonight, rest may already be near, closer than it feels. You don't have to chase it. You only have to leave the windows open a little and let it find you the way it has found every other night. Slowly, quietly, and exactly enough, not a drop more than is needed. not a drop less. We've reached the quiet edge of 100 small facts about quiet tears, and we've moved through them slowly enough that the night has had a chance to do most of the work alongside us. If you're still here, that's perfectly okay. If you've already drifted in and out a few times, that's also perfectly okay. Nothing about tonight required anything from you, and nothing tomorrow does either. At least not yet. Tomorrow can be tomorrow when it arrives. On its own time, quiet tears, in the end, are one of the soft languages of being human, a way the body says I'm here, a way it asks for tenderness, a way it shifts gently toward rest when the day has been long, and the night, in the end, is one of the soft languages of being alive, a slow loosening, a quiet workshop, a wide and patient container for everything the day couldn't carry on its own. Whatever arrived tonight, you don't have to carry it any longer. The night will hold it for you. And the night has very strong arms. You can let the body be supported, the breath be slow, and the room be small around you, drawn in close like a soft circle. There's no last thing to do. There's no final fact to remember. There is only this, the soft permission to rest, repeating itself without needing your attention, returning each evening like a faithful old friend. And if any tears appeared at any point tonight, even small ones, even unnoticed ones, they were never out of place. They were part of the night's quiet way of helping you settle. Now, perhaps, the eyelids can rest where they already are, and the breath can take over the rhythm of the room. The night will continue without you having to manage it. You can simply drift. Good night. Gently. Gently. Good night. Quietly. Quietly. Good night. And rest.